the state of India's politics and relationship with Great Britain. The conversation was cut short when their British officer, Lieutenant Lawrence, ordered them to move out, ending their patrol. Suddenly, they hear a woman's loud cry and a good number of tribesmen shouting from a distance. It was the Afghans, and they were about to execute a woman. Havildar was ordered to stand down, but he chose to save the poor lady. Saidullah, the group leader, ordered his men to attack, but the Sikh warrior was putting up a fight. When they eventually managed to overpower him, the other Sikh soldiers come to his rescue, causing the Afghans to retreat. The patrolling troops march back to the Gulistan fort. Lieutenant Lawrence reports to his senior officer, Major Day, about Havildar's insubordination. This prompted the major to order a soldier to contact Lieutenant Colonel Houghton, who's garrisoned at the nearby Lockhart fort via heliography. The Afghans attack the fort without warning, and the defenders spring into action. An enemy sniper by the tree manages to kill one Sikh soldier. Havildar spots a rope without any clear shot and uses it to rappel down the walls. He kills a few enemy soldiers digging a hole as he gets down. Although the defenders have the advantage point on top of the tower, the sniper has a clear shot and kills a machine gunner. Meanwhile, Havildar hides in the tent, then throws a bomb at the Afghans, killing a whole platoon, and the explosion causes the sniper to fall from the tree. The brave Sikh then takes advantage of the chaos and goes after the sniper. When he caught up, many Afghans emerged and pointed their weapon at Havildar. Fortunately, Colonel Houghton and other reinforcements arrive, causing the Afghans to retreat once again. After the encounter, Colonel Houghton punishes Havildar by assigning him to Fort Saragrahi, whose primary function is to enable communication between Gulistan and Lockhart. It's known for where not much action happens. As he goes out, Lieutenant Lawrence embarrasses Havildar and forces an apology from him. Havildar endures the humiliation, swallows his pride, and does what he's told. Later, Havildar heads for his new assignment when he encounters the lady he rescued earlier named Gulwareen. She offered him some sweets, and after a brief exchange, he continued on his journey. While on a quick break, he talks to himself and imagines his wife scolding him for entertaining another woman. Then a flashback on how he and his wife, Jeevani, met. He met her while riding on a horse rickshaw. At the time, she was with a couple of friends, and right away, it was love at first sight. When she and her friends got off, she left her yellow handkerchief. One day, after praying at the temple, he accidentally steps on a pile of leaves, causing it to scatter. Jeevani, who just finished cleaning that part, quickly reprimands him for the mess. In an effort to make it up, the very next day, Havildar surprises Jeevani by cleaning up the temple. From then on, the two hit off and, not soon after, get married. Back at present, Havildar arrives at Saragrahi fort and hands the transfer order to the corporal. When he tries to meet the men, he finds the soldiers garrisoned there very disorderly. They were cockfighting, and many were not in proper uniforms. When they are too focused on their entertainment, Havildar fires his rifle to get their attention, and the men then line up. The fort's cook, Daad, offers Havildar a cup of water, but the sergeant declines. The 36th Sikh regiment had it too good as there wasn't much going on in the fort. To enforce discipline on the men, he had to punish them so that it won't happen again. He orders them to wrestle each other and have the rooster watch them. They can only stop until the rooster says so. Later, Havildar hears the men singing and proceeds to check it out. When he arrived, the men were enjoying themselves and stopped wrestling. When asked why they did so, the corporal explained that because the roosters made a noise, cook-a-doodle-doo. He further explains that the rooster was asking to be cooked. As for punishment, Havildar orders the troops not to eat for a week, and when he returns to his quarters, he couldn't help but laugh at the absurd explanation. Days passed by peacefully. Havildar tries to see what his men are doing. He teases one soldier cleaning a rifle at the weapons storage by going back and forth. Then disturbs some of the troops at their barracks doing their own thing. Meanwhile, the Afghan leaders have a meeting. In the past, the tribes have been attacking their enemies separately, and this time, Saidullah tries to persuade the tribal leaders to combine forces in striking. They were hesitant at first because the British paid them off to not attack, but Saidullah offered to double the payment and remove the border. It was too good of an offer for the tribal leaders to pass up, so they agreed to unite. Back at Saragrahi, the soldiers were bored out of their minds on top of being hungry. It's been a few days since the punishment began. Havildar thought it was enough and called for Daad to prepare some food for the troops. The cook announces that the sentence is off, and many soldiers celebrate. Shanda, a prideful soldier, stops them from eating, stating that they don't need Havildar's pity. Daad reveals that they weren't the only ones fasting. The fort commander wasn't eating his share as well. The troops confront him and ask the reason why he didn't eat. Havildar calmly replies that he couldn't bear to eat his full when his troops go hungry. This earned Havildar his men's trust and respect. Later that night, the troops have their usual Indian dance number. The following day, at the Afghan camp, they have decided that the whole army would attack Saragarhi first to cut off communications between forts Lockhart and Gulistan. They figured that with 10,000 men, they should be able to conquer the forts by evening. In the meantime, Havildar goes to a tiny Afghan village to scout. Upon arriving at the settlement, he asks an old man why the children and the elderly are doing hard labor. The locals reply that since the young ones are off to war, they have no choice but to rebuild the mosque themselves. Later, Havildar confronts his troops and asks them if they can help rebuild the mosque in the village below. Not one soul volunteered. The next day, Havildar goes on to help the Afghan locals when an accident occurs. The children playing stumble on a wooden stand, causing a large pillar to fall. Havildar shields the child and prepares for the worst. When he looks back, his men were there to catch the weight and help rebuild the place of worship. While taking photographs at Fort Lockhart, Lieutenant Colonel Houghton notices an incoming army and signals Saragarhi. A young soldier named Gurmukh immediately translates the message and informs the Havildar that a large army approaches. From their angle, they can't spot the incoming enemy forces, but it doesn't take long before they make an appearance. Thousands and thousands of Afghan troops appear right before their very eyes. Saidullah emerges from the crowd and drags Gulwarine to the front, and beheads her for all to see. Havildar informs his men to make a decision for themselves. The colonel orders the 21 garrisoned men to abandon the fort and withdraw since Lockhart and Gulistan can't send reinforcements. The soldiers laugh it off. Havildar assures his troops that he'll stay and fight, but not for money, certainly not for the British oppressors, but for his pride as a Sikh. He wears a saffron turban symbolizing bravery. After giving a hearty speech to increase the morale of his men, Havildar positions most of the soldiers at the top of the fort and instructs 2 soldiers to wait by the cliff. Despite his Afghan roots, Da'ad volunteers to fight with the 36th Sikh Regiment, but Havildar gives him a much more noble task. That is to provide water to injured soldiers, including injured soldiers from the enemy's side. The attack starts moments later, and the Afghan tribal leaders signal the charge. Thousands of enemy soldiers rush towards the fort and are met with rifle fire. Their foes were coming in from all sides, and when some Afghans with bombs tried to backdoor the defenders, the Sikhs were prepared for them. The renowned enemy sniper positions himself in between a rock crack. He manages to hit one Sikh, and he falls down. A brave soul tries to rescue his comrade but gets hit in the process. Eventually, with Havildar's help, they manage to get back inside, but the soldier dies anyways. On the other hand, Gurmukh, an inexperienced soldier, refuses to fight, stating that he hasn't killed anyone. Instead, he is given a different task, to update the other forts of their progress. The fierce firefight came to a halt when the Afghans signal a parley. Having received a message that reinforcements will arrive the next day, Havildar needs to hold out until then. The tribe leaders approach the walls, and the warrior Sikh takes advantage of the situation by stalling. The Afghans demand their surrender, but before they can continue, Havildar signals to pause. Da'ad then runs towards the injured foes to offer them water. Not impressed by his antics, Saidullah pours the water on the ground. But little did the Sikhs know that they weren't the only ones using the parley to delay. The Afghans sent 2 men with loads of bombs to climb the cliff and plant the bombs under the enemy's noses. When they were in position, they signal their allies. Before the parley ends, Havildar returns 2 captured Afghans. When they got back, some Afghan troops removed the veil, causing it to ignite and revealing that they had bombs tied to their bodies. And not a minute later, a large explosion killed a good number of Afghans. The Sikhs celebrate the success of their ploy. The Afghans launched another wave of attack and managed to reach the gates. Meanwhile, the sniper continues to pick the defenders one by one. Havildar doesn't have a clear shot due to the distance and position of the adversary. Thinking quickly, he improvises by attaching a monoscope to his rifle, giving him an advantage. He snipes the enemy sniper, pulls the trigger, and gets hit. 5 of the defending soldiers run low in ammo and decide to open up the gate and engage in melee combat. They managed to finish off many attackers, but they were met with a rain of bullets before they could retreat. One soldier manages to close the gates and crawl towards his pal, but it isn't long before he breathes his last. In the afternoon, they are running very low in ammo, and the unending waves of enemies continue to advance. The enemy piles up hundreds of dead bodies below the wall to use it as a platform. An Afghan could get over the fence and stab one tired Sikh soldier. Another sacrificed himself by jumping over the wall, dragging along two enemies. One by one, the enemy emerges from the walls, and slowly the Sikhs dwindle in numbers. To make matters worse, the bomb planted earlier exploded, creating a large hole in the wall and killing multiple defenders. There are only 4 left, including Havildar. He orders give his last order as he makes his last stand. After removing the stripes off his uniform and fighting the Afghans with a red-hot sword, he remembers his wife Jeevani one last time before being tragically stabbed. Setullah murders Daad, then is stabbed by Havildar while attempting to remove his turban. An Afghan leader is impressed by the Havildar's bravery and instructs his troops not to touch any Sikh's turban. Gul Badsha, one of the Afghan chieftains, requests that the signaling post be lit up so that Gurmukh's agonizing screams might be heard as a consolation. Gurmukh emerges with his body on fire as the Afghans set fire to the post, but instead of screams of pain, he lets out a war cry.